July 14th, 2014 Harwich Board of Selectmen meeting, and we'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Is anyone here for weekly briefing? Norm?
I want to just defer.
Chief Clark, I'll get it correctly.
Chris, I see it's under the consent agenda. Did you want to, should we talk about it, or?
If you want, that'd be good, Chief.
Just briefly brought forward a project that actually started with Bob Lawton and has gone forward with Chris. We have two pickup trucks. They're 2006. One is a pickup truck and the other one has a little brush fire unit on it. And working with the Conservation Trust folks, they've agreed to donate some money to swap the bodies on them, because one has just turned 10,000 miles and the other one has almost 110,000 miles on it. So the one that's got the high miles, we want to have the brush unit on it and take that body off so that we can really balance these miles out. So it's a really good project to work with the DPW mechanics for some pretty short money, about $6,000, $7,000. Surrounding communities are spending, $80,000 or $90,000 to kind of come up with the same type of brand new. So we're looking to use some money that I have available through some accounts and with the Conservation Trust people to help take care of all the properties that, beautiful properties that we have, but we want to protect them.
Peter?
Could we just ask, Chief, what constitutes the brush features of the truck, just in essence?
It's a four-wheel drive pickup truck, an F-350, carries 200 gallons of water and a hose reel with some smaller size hose, about 1,000 feet of hose that we can, get down the dirt roads to mitigate smaller fires. If we get something large, we're going to need some help, but we can mitigate many of the small fires without doing further damage to the environment, like some of the large trucks do. In the days gone by, they used to knock the trees down to get to the fire, and that was kind of, you're doing more damage by knocking the trees down than you are putting the fire out. So small trucks are very advantageous to us, and we just felt that this was a good way to use existing resources, partnering with the Conservation Trust folks to get this done.
Thanks.
Thanks again, Norm. Any other questions for Chief Clark? If not, any other weekly briefing? We'll go to public comments, announcements. Mr. Hollow, you?
Actually, I'm standing in for Leo Kakunis tonight. He has written a letter that he wanted me to read into the public record and then give you copies of for your perusal later, Mr. Chair. And again, this is him speaking whenever it says I. Dear Selectmen, I appear before you this evening, and he is the elected delegate from the town of Harwich, the Assembly delegates, with a list of questions and requests for information. First, permit me to give you some background for the matter at hand. In August 2011, the Assembly of Delegates of Barnstable County voted to establish a subcommittee to conduct an inquiry into the relationship between county government, the Cape Light Compact, and the Cape and Vineyard Electric Cooperative. In May 2012, that committee submitted a report to the full Assembly of Delegates. The report has been made public and is available on the Assembly website. Also, I delivered said report to your offices. In that report, one recommendation to the Assembly was to refer the matter to the Attorney General and Inspector General's offices. I believe mainly due to the lack of response to record requests of these organizations by the subcommittee. December 2013, the full Assembly voted to send a formal request to the Office of the Attorney General and the Office of the Inspector General, asking for them to aid in the inquiry of the relationship between the above-mentioned organizations. It should be noted that the county commissioners did not support that action. Beginning in the spring of 2014, the Cape Light Compact began its filing for revisions to its municipal aggregation plan with the Department of Public Utilities, the DPU. Through this process, the Office of the Attorney General began a series of filing requests. For reference, please access, and he gives you the website access and the docket number, which is 14-69 on the DPU site of the state. In brief summary, the Office Attorney General asked for 24-plus documents and evidence. The Cape Light Compact only answered for 4 of these items and refused to comply with the other requests. This began a series of responses and motions to compel. This brings us today to why I, Ken, me standing in for him, I'm appearing in front of you this evening. He'll be here later, but he had another commitment earlier. It has come to my attention that on July 8th, 2014, the law firm of BCK Law PC sent a letter by hand and electronically to the Department of Public Utilities, care of the Secretary Mark D. Marini, and he gives an attachment of that letter in the packet. In said correspondence, the attorney states his strong opposition to the Office of Attorney General motion seeking leave to file reply comments. My, Leo's, concerns are that in the first paragraph of this correspondence, and there's a list of a lot of towns, but he highlighted Harwich, on behalf of the towns of, and then Harwich is listed amongst them, please accept this letter as the compact's response in opposition to the Office of Attorney General's motion seeking leave to file reply comments filed on July 3rd, 2014 with the Department of Public Utilities in the above referenced proceeding. Please also refer to the certificate of service here and attached, which also lists the town of Harwich as a petitioner. It appears that the town of Harwich has taken a position, and the position of the Cape Light Compact, in that they need not comply with the requests of the Office of Attorney General. As to my formal questions and request, 1, has the Board of Selectmen taken a formal position on the above-mentioned matter? 2, if yes, please provide Leo with the date of the meeting that this matter was discussed and voted, and any minutes and documents relating to that decision. 3, if no, then he respectfully requests that you agenda this item in the future at a next scheduled meeting for discussion and a vote, one way or the other. As the elected representative of the Assembly of Delegates for the town of Harwich and a member of the subcommittee that conducted the inquiry to these organizations, I find it shocking that the town of Harwich would stand in the way of the Office of Attorney General in the performance of their duties, seeking truth and full disclosure from another governmental organization. I intend to bring this matter to the full assembly, as they also are mentioned in the first paragraph, as a petitioner. I will update you, the board, as to any action taken, and I look forward to your response in this matter. Respectfully, Leo G. Kukunis. Again, he wasn't able to be here, and I think I speak for him. I know I speak for myself in this. No one is attacking the work of the compact or the objectives of the compact, but there is a question on his part and on the Assembly's part about the transparency of where the money is coming in and where the money is going out and how they operate, and the relationships between the county and the towns. And the Attorney General did, in fact, ask questions relating to those relationships, and they took the position that they only needed to answer 4 of them, and that they didn't need to answer the other 16-plus questions. So he doesn't want any resolution. He just wanted me to deliver this.
Thank you, Mr. Howell. I admit for myself, I have a superficial knowledge of this, primarily from reading the newspapers. I haven't got involved in the details. But I don't recall us taking a position on this at all, unless you guys, I missed last meeting, but I don't think we've taken I don't think this has come up, so.
No.
Just, it is interesting, Mr. Chairman. I didn't understand, but I did get an email from the Attorney General's office asking to attend a meeting. So I had no idea what that was in terms of background. So I will forward that to the board members, and I'll try to research that, because maybe that has something to do with, related to this.
Let me suggest we do that, Don, and then we can have discussions whether we want it as an agenda item.
While you're doing that, if I
Forward.
might suggest, Mr. Chair, there's also an agreement that you folks voted on with a contractual agreement with the compact.
Right.
Apparently, in that, buried in the language is, I know you folks are the contracting authority, but apparently buried in the language there, your representative to the Cape Light Compact has the ability to take a position to modify that agreement without it going back to you. So you may wish to look at that agreement again and revisit it.
And I do remember that, because we debated that for some time, Don, and in the end, we were a bit uncomfortable with it, but we decided to go along with it because that's what the other towns had been doing, and it was getting to the 11th hour. And at that time, we still were hopeful that MSTAR would start taking electricity and paying us, which they keep finding excuses not to move forward, but we felt timing was of essence, but I do remember that. Ed?
Well, the ability to modify the agreement of the Cape Light Compact was built into the original approval back in, when was Cape Light Compact founded? The ability of the representatives to modify the agreement going forward stems from that day. Most recently, we've in their updates of the agreement, they added into if there is any vote being proposed by the representatives to modify the agreement before they can take a final vote, those modifications have to be sent specifically to the board's selectmen so they know it's an issue coming up, so the selectmen can have a chance to have input into that, as opposed to the representatives just doing it at one of their meetings without any notification to the member towns.
I'm just suggesting you may want to drag that back out and to revisit it, because that may possibly be one of the explanations for how the Harwich town took a position that you may or may not have actually voted.
Yeah, okay. We'll follow up, and Chris,
See
we're
what I
waiting
can
to get
track
your,
down.
what you find out from your contacts.
Can we also have that letter put in our packet for next week, or in correspondence or something, so we have it?
Yeah, I think I just got it the tail end of last week. I'll forward it.
And this letter as well. I mean, I
Yeah,
meant this
we'll
letter.
scan that and send that through.
We need a copy of Leo's letter?
That's what I'm asking for.
Okay, all right, just to
Yeah.
be clear.
Okay,
Thank you.
we're settled on that then. Any other public comments or announcements? If not, we'll move to the consent agenda. Ed, we should read this.
Mr. Chair, I'd move approval of the consent agenda and the recommended actions thereon, including approval of minutes for June 9th regular session, a vote to approve the application by the American Lung Association for the Autumn Escape Bike Trek on September 24th, vote to approve additional reappointments and appointments, vote to approve the personnel bylaw compensation plan effective June 30th, 2014, vote to accept the gift of $3,000 from the Harwich Conservation Trust for modifying the fire department brush truck, a vote to approve application for renewal of junk dealer's license by Dr. J.B. O'Neill, Inc., DBA Monahan and Company, vote to approve daily rates for the Allen Harbor Public Access Facility in keeping with the rates at Saquatucket Public Access Facility, a vote to accept the gift of a new sign at Brooks Park approved by the Recreation Department, vote to dissolve the Water Quality Task Force Citizens Advisory for the Comprehensive Water Management Plan Wastewater Implementation Committee, and a vote to approve the order by the town administrator relative to the dog hearing continuance from May 27th, 2014.
Second.
Any discussion?
Just one correction on the committee appointments. The one that's dated July 9th. Daniel Twarek will be being appointed June 30th, 2016 as an expiration date.
Okay, Peter?
Mr. Chairman, could I just ask for the record, could we read those appointments into the record, please?
Certainly. There's a ton of them.
It's all right.
Torture me, huh?
Yeah.
All right. The appointments from June 30th, these are reappointments. Lee Culver, to the Community Center Facilities Committee as the Rec and Youth designee. Peter DeBacher, Community Preservation Committee from the Planning Board. Robert Bradley, Community Preservation Committee from the Historical District Committee. Walter Diggs, Community Preservation from the Conservation Commission. Matt Hart to Waterways, Cameron Smith to Waterways. These are all dated June 30th, 2017 as an expiration. And previously appointed, but there was never a record of terms, so we decided to create one. To the voter information system, Joanne Rist, June 30th, 2017. Christina Joyce, June 30th, 2016. Peggy Rose, June 30th, 2015. And Michael Dempsey is being moved on the Conservation Commission from a regular member to an alternate for June 30th, 2016. We also have the following appointments in the letter dated June 9th. Wayne Kuchar Stone to the Trails Committee, June 30th, 2015. Miranda DeWitt to the Historic District Historic Commission as an associate, June 30th, 2017. Daniel Hall Waterways as an alternate, June 30th, 2017. Daniel Torek, Community Preservation Committee as a Board of Selectmen appointee, June 30th, 2016. Kathleen Muller, Board of Appeals as an alternate, June 30th, 2017. And Jerry Beltis to the new Traffic Safety Committee, June 30th, 2017.
Thank you, Linda. It's always fun to pick on you, but it is important. We, as a town of Harwich, we live by our volunteer committees, and so it's a good suggestion to read, and so people know who's there and who's helping us out. Chris, I have a question on the personnel bylaw. Is on my computer is page 19. It's for a temporary employee compensation plan. You have a note that one of that's no budget. What do you mean by that?
Same
That
question I
handwritten
had.
comment.
And it says
Under which-
2005 on it, too.
2005, then you have without 2% increase, and you have no budget. I just wondered if some handwritten notes, were those meant to be on here, or were they, I'm just trying to understand it.
I think that there were certain employees that were temporary that we did not make the 2% adjustment, and other ones we did. So what I did was I asked the town accountant, he and I, when I was putting the budget together early on, we kind of worked together and we said, okay, what is 2%? And I asked Dave if he would go through and calculate out what 2% meant from a budgetary standpoint, so we could budget it. So the ones that are without budget are the ones that we didn't have the 2% allocated to, and the ones, I think those notes may be for just Dave's comments.
Dave's
to be
comments.
more so than,
Okay.
Okay.
all the schedules that you have in front of you should have the 2%
The
reflected on
2%,
there.
and those are.
Except for the part-time temporary ones
Do not.
do not.
Okay,
All right.
okay, that helps me out. Thank you, Chris. Any other comments or questions on on this agenda item? Mike? Mr. Locke, I'll be more formal.
Thanks for your time. Michael Locke, Executive Director of the Harwich Conservation Trust, a nonprofit land trust in town preserving lands to protect woods, water, wildlife, and the shared quality of life that we derive from those special places. I just wanted to acknowledge Chief Clark as it relates to agenda item 5E, the gift of $3,000 from the Harwich Conservation Trust for modifying the fire department's brush truck. Just to give you some background, Chief Clark, in his very forward-thinking way, approached Harwich Conservation Trust to start a conversation about enhancing his department's ability to fight wildfires on conservation lands. And as we all do, Harwich Conservation Trust recognizes the outstanding emergency response readiness of both the fire department and police department. And as that readiness relates to wildfire prevention, Harwich Conservation Trust was fortunate to connect with a long-standing couple from Harwichport who recognized the need for assisting with wildfire prevention, not only to protect important conservation lands, but also to protect the many homes that surround these special areas. People are drawn to these areas, and for good reason, whether it's exercise or the social aspect or solitude, wildlife viewing, any number of reasons. And so we're very pleased to donate, thanks to this generous couple, $3,000 to enhance the fire department's wildfire prevention readiness. So I want to thank Chief Clark and the fire department for all their work.
Thank you, and Chief Clark gave us a bit of a description of this before he came in, Michael, so we did get a heads up on it. And thank the donor as well. Chief?
Again, we just want to thank the Conservation Trust folks for partnering with us to really think outside the box to keep costs down, but keep efficiency and
Yeah.
up. And they bought in, and here we go. Thank you.
You continue to raise the bar there, Norm, about expectations, so.
That's good, because my evaluation is tomorrow.
Okay, we'll move into the next
We
item.
haven't voted yet, have we?
We haven't voted. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
That
I'm
was
glad
the-
we
That was the
voted.
consent agenda, right?
Right.
You just voted? Thank
That was
you.
consent agenda, we just voted. We'll next move to public hearing, and on the public hearing proposed fee amendment relative to town slip mooring permit fees, and who wants to read this into?
Chair. The Town of Harwich Board of Selectmen notice of public hearing, proposed fee amendments. Harwich Board of Selectmen will hold a public hearing on Monday, July 14th, 2014, no earlier than 7:15 in the Don B. Griffin Room located at Town Hall, 732 Main Street, Harwich, for the purpose of reviewing proposed fee amendments relative to the town's slip and mooring permit late fees. All members of the public having an interest in this topic are cordially invited to attend the public hearing and provide information and testimony relevant to this issue. Signed, the Harwich Board of Selectmen.
Thank you. Chris or John, who wants to, I see Matt there too, who wants to lead this discussion?
I was going to have John lead the discussion.
Okay.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, John Rendon, Harbor Master. In your packet, you should have the recommended changes to the harbor management plan that relate to late fees. Just in quick summary, there currently is a $100 late fee for folks who don't pay their annual slip permit fee by the deadline, by the stated deadline. But it's listed under Appendix B, and I'll just read it. If the payment is received after March 1st, the Waterways Committee is under no obligation to accept the payment. If it does, based on significant extenuating circumstances, a late fee of $100 will be charged. I think that that statement there, we don't want to have the waterways in a position of assessing a late fee. They are the body that people will turn to in order to appeal the harbor master's decision, not just dealing with late fees, but any regulation or any action that I take as harbor master. There should be a process in place where a member of the public can appeal my decision or my action. And so I think that's a flawed statement there, or process there, that I'd like to see changed. So that's one of the changes in my proposal to you this evening. I'm not changing the $100 value amount for late fees, but I am suggesting that if members do not meet the deadlines both for their 1/3 deposit and their final payment, that we better define the process for assigning a late fee. Currently, if a late fee is assigned, we often get the question from those that are assessed a late fee. Well, that means I can pay the balance over a long period of time. I'm going to pay the $100 fee, and then I can. There's nothing in here that defines the period for which we give them to now pay the balance. And so, again, what I'm suggesting is we give a defined period of 2 weeks after the deadline to pay not only the balance that they owe, but the late fee that's been assessed. The second piece of that is we assign late fees for slips, but we don't address mooring permits. And we often get people who don't pay their mooring permit by the deadline. And right now we have no process in place, no definition in place to either, one, assess a late fee, or there is no grace period. The policy says you don't pay by the deadline, you forfeit your mooring. I'd like to give a grace period. I'd like to give that 2-week period for them to pay their fee, but it should also be assessed a late fee. So those are the two changes that I'm suggesting here in this packet with regards to late fees.
Okay. Ed?
What are the current deadlines?
If you go to Appendix B, that I submitted as part of this proposal, the deadline for the slip deposit is December 1st. And I'm looking at paragraph K of Appendix B, and that's an added section that I've recommended.
I think those are the proposed. I think, Ed, your question is, what are they now? Is that?
Well, those are the deadlines.
Those are the
Okay,
deadlines.
So the
Those
current
haven't
deadline,
changed.
the current deadline is, and I'll just give you a kind of a rundown. For slip deposits, we mail out those renewals on the 15th of October, and we give 45 days for the member to submit payment. So the deadline would be December 1st. On the final payment for slip permits, they're mailed out the 15th of January, and they're due the 1st of March. On mooring permits, we mail out the renewals on the 1st of February, and those are due March 15th.
Okay. Ed?
Okay, so if those are the deadlines that the late fee kicks in on, December 1st, March 1st, and March 15th, the asterisk says failure to pay the required slip mooring fee and late fee by the defined dates, which are December 1st, March 1st.
No, sir.
Where's the 2 weeks defined?
Let me just explain. In the notes, after each one, it says applied after the December 1 deadline. And then if you read the asterisks, failure to pay the required slip mooring permit fee and late fee by defined dates in section 3.1, 3.2, and 3.3 will result in immediate forfeiture of the slip mooring. So if you go to 3.1, and you'll see in red what I've added, a failure to meet the March 15th deadline will result in a late fee per Appendix B. Failure to pay by April 1st will result in immediate forfeiture of the mooring. So you have 2 weeks from March 15th to April 1st to pay the late fee and the balance of the mooring permit. And the same applies for the final payment in section 3.3. And
answer your question,
3.5 is the
Yeah.
mooring.
Okay. Thank you, John. Any other questions for John?
Okay.
Peter?
John, just a clarification, in Appendix B, Section H, which is the power charge rates, the per foot and per night seem to be, or they are in bold. Are they always in bold, or is that something that's changed in this rev of this?
No, sir, they're always in bold.
Okay,
That's the way it's
so
been.
it's not meant to indicate a change.
No, sir, no.
Okay. Anything else? Any comments from the audience? Peter, excuse me.
Mr. Chairman, I just think it makes perfect sense that the harbor master be the one responsible for this and allow the waterways, committee, whatever, to be a backstop to it, if there's a protest or something going on. I mean, I think John needs to be in control of this.
Yeah, I agree. Matt, you have a comment?
Yes, just briefly. John brought this before the waterway. We reviewed it in course, and it was unanimously in favor of it.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments? If not, I'll close the public hearing. And our next step then is to vote. All in favor of the,
We need a motion.
I'm ready to vote already. I'll take a
Yeah.
motion.
Mr. Chair, I move that we accept the proposed fee amendments relative to town slip and mooring permit late fees.
Is there a second then?
Second.
Any more discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Move on then to, there's no old business tonight. We'll move to new business. First item is request by Cumberland Farms to be heard by the Board of Selectmen as part of its administrative appeal to provide further information on its position. And let me just comment very briefly that, if I may, Mr. Vieira, that in the documentation in our packet, this seems to be very focused on the that there can be administrative appeal, but only, and we're only talking about the peer review process.
I understand.
There's a lot of, we have a lot in our pack about different issues going on, but our focus tonight, as I understand, is very narrow.
I appreciate that. I
And I
understand.
would like to turn over to Mr. Clark for comments, then I'll get.
And
I'll turn
Mr.
it over
Chairman,
you.
just to that end, what the town has done is, apparently there's a state statute, Chapter 44, Section 53G, that allows for a planning board to ask for peer review in the process in which that's engaged. That's actually under our subdivision rules and regs, under Chapter 400, Section 7-1. And it says here very specifically for administrative appeal, which we did receive within the 20-day period that was in the rules, but it says the grounds for such an appeal shall be limited to claims that the consultant selected has a conflict of interest or does not possess the minimum qualifications required for the task. So I would think that in order for the board to stay within the confines of the appeal process, that's really the two grounds that the board should hear from the applicant on, is if there is a conflict of interest, or if the applicant's, the peer review firm selected does not possess the minimum qualifications. I did inform the applicant that we did have the material online that outlined all this, so he was aware of the material that was provided to the board, which included the curriculum vitae of the firm that was selected to do the peer review.
Thank you, Chris. I just want to open with that because it looks like there's been a lot of discussion, and I don't want us to get way beyond what our power is. And so, Mr. Vieira, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. My name's Jamie Vieira. I'm an attorney from Dennis. I represent Cumberland Farms. Very briefly, Cumberland Farms is in the process of having an application before the planning board for a raise and replacement of its existing location at 576 Main Street, Route 28, with an adjoining property at 574, the former Gibson package store that Cumberland's recently acquired. It is our contention that the recent vote of the planning board for peer review under the circumstances of where this project has evolved is basically being utilized and creates a conflict of interest contrary to the interests of my client proceeding before that board. To understand very briefly and the backstory, I could provide you with a copy of a couple of plans if you'd like to look at it, but in short, Cumberland Farms has submitted its application for the project, an application that had been unanimously approved by the Zoning Board of Appeals. Cumberland Farms designed, through its team of planners and other engineers, a proposed site layout. Early in the process, at the request of staff, Cumberland's did engage and look into an alternative site design to see if there was some feasibility to have a layout different than what it had proposed. Cumberland Farms, notwithstanding its belief that its project was more than adequate and complied with the bylaw, decided it would prepare plans and sketches and met with the town planner, town engineer, to look at different alternative designs at the site. It came to the conclusion, after drawing up a set of plans on an alternative design, that an alternative design that was looked at and favored was unsafe and unworkable. And I won't go into all the details, but Cumberland's not only drew up the plan, it had the plan reviewed by its own people, it then sent it out to its own outside consultant, and that outside consultant provided different types of analysis of this alternative design and came back with the conclusion it was unsafe and unworkable. Unsafe. A car pulling a trailer to go to the gas pumps has to back in under every circumstance under that plan. The tanker that is going to fill the pumps in the ground has to go past the island and the building to the back side and still back out under 28, which was the one facet of Cumberland's project, as proposed, that would eliminate that hazard. The present store operates where the truck has to back out on 28, and it's trying to avoid that particular hazard. And so, the planning board, despite having that information, indicated at its last meeting that, well, that information was going to be disregarded because it was, quote, biased. That is perhaps because the applicant had put it together and because the applicant had a professional look at it, it was biased. Well, I don't know how the folks could be biased. They're like anyone else who comes in and presents their materials before the board. And so what Cumberland's is desirous of the board is to look at is, why is this a conflict of interest? Because it can't be that the alternative proposal that we say is unsafe and unworkable is being reviewed by the peer review group to say it's unsafe and unworkable. Why do I say that? Because there is an unbiased opinion that says it's unsafe. That's from your fire chief. Your fire chief has put in writing twice. One time looking at alternative designs, and secondly, looking at the materials we supplied with our professionals who looked at the turning radiuses, and has put in writing on 2 occasions that that proposed project creates, quote, substantial public safety issues with the offloading of the gasoline as well as with fueling of vehicles other than a standard-sized passenger car. It continues to be my, Chief Clark's, belief that the pumps should be orientated as they are presently are at the existing Cumberland Farms, consistent with what we propose. An opinion equally underscored by certified fire inspector Roy Eldridge Jr., who also has opined twice in writing. Yeah. So what is peer review being used for? Your bylaw says you use peer review to review a proposed project. It goes on to say it is only for services rendered in connection with a specific project. But what is being asked? The peer review group is being asked to review a project the applicant didn't put forward. It's being used to review a project the applicant has told on no uncertain terms it will not do. So it's being asked to put out money to have someone look at a project it has no desire to do whatsoever. And where does the conflict arise? The conflict arises in the scope of the services that was asked for. Quote, be prepared to comment on the impact of town-suggested modifications. That is, Cumberland Farms is being asked to pay money so that someone else can redesign the alternative design it has no intention of doing. And is it about safety? Well, it can't be about safety. What's it about? It's about perhaps having this outfit tinker with that redesign to a point that maybe someone could say it might be safe, and then if Cumberland's doesn't do it, use it as a basis to deny. That is an absolute conflict of interest and a misuse of the process before you. They're not going to study the application or the project before it. They're going to study and redesign something an applicant never intends to do. Now, property owners come before boards all the time, and they put information before the boards of what they would like on their application. And I agree, peer review can be an important tool for boards to get information. But not every applicant comes with planners, engineers, outside consultants, and presents information only to then be told by the board members, well, that's nice, but here's what we want you to do instead, and we want you to pay to have someone else redesign your property. It's just a question of fairness. I don't know what the outcome of the meeting is going to be before the planning board. When we get to that, we'll get to that. But we're bogged down in this issue of, we'll come up with some other design that the applicant doesn't want to do. And no one, be it Cumberland Farms or a single-family property owner, should have to outlay money so that a board can utilize that to redesign it and use it as a pretext to possibly deny the application. That's unfair. It's not what peer review is designed for, and we're opposed to it. So we're asking you to overturn the decision that was made by the planning board because of the conflict I've just laid out. Thank you.
But let me ask you a question. Would you define peer review in a specific way? Why wouldn't you define it? You could easily define as peer review of taking into account Chief Clark's comments, the design that your company, Cumberland Farms design, put forward, and look at all those to have a peer review that's not directed towards just the plan review. I would question a peer review concept if it only looked at one plan. I would think a peer review is looking at all the various inputs. Why have you defined it as being one-sided in that manner?
Because the alternative arrangement is not the applicant's project. This is not a project where an applicant comes before the board with maybe competing alternative site designs and looks for some guidance as to which one might work better. This is one where the applicant has said this is the one that they want to do, not because it's stubborn, but because its own professionals have said that what the alternative is
But you're still not
doesn't work.
asking, I don't think you answered my question.
Then
though.
perhaps I don't understand, sir, and I'll
Well-
try to do a better job.
No, I'm sure you will, because you do a very good job. My question is, it looks to me that when I think of peer review, and I admit I'm more looking at peer review, my background's more science, but you try to get all the various inputs in to pull those together. It's not looking, you're suggesting that peer review will only look at what the planning board's thoughts are, not what other people have brought to the picture. Wouldn't you expect a peer review to look at all that?
I would agree with you, but I read the scope of the outline as the letter that was directed to me. It outlined what the scope of the peer review was. It's a June 12th letter that asks.
Yeah, no, I've read that, thank you.
And
But,
what it asks and underscores, as I pointed out in paragraph 4, is this impact on town suggested modifications. Nowhere in this letter does it say that this group's going to analyze the applicant's project. That's not what it's about. So I would agree with you that, yeah, under normal circumstances, peer review is an important tool. But if we're going to talk about safety, why do we have to spend any more money? Your chief public safety officials have said it's unsafe and unfair. And we just simply have no interest in spending money to go over here and look at something we're never going to do.
Let me, I know, Chris, you wanted to comment.
Mr. Chairman, a couple things. One, I think we are getting a little bit far afield of the original scope of what the board can actually consider. But, you know, I understand and appreciate what the gentleman's saying, but to have an applicant say that they've done all the work, they've done all the review, and they're satisfied that they comply seems to me to be a little contrary to the regulator's ability to make sure that we are regulating and making sure that the proposal that's in front of it is in compliance with planning regulations. I understand the fire chief has weighed in on the fire-related concerns, but has the concerns relative to planning board issues been adhered to? And I don't think it has been. And I think that the planning board is perfectly within its rights to say, is there a means for the design to be done that complies with planning regulations and is safe? We will certainly provide to the consultant the information that the fire chief has provided. But I think the planning board is asking for, is this compliant with our planning regulations? And that's what the peer review is designed to accomplish. To be honest, I'm a little shocked that we're here tonight, and I'll explain why. That planning board came back and we did the original estimate. It was about $6,000, and there was 2 or 3 different concepts that they were going to look at. So to the requester's information, that probably was too much. So I sat down with the planning board chair and the planner and said, can we do will it comply? Can we do one model that complies and then the model that has been proposed? And we've reduced the cost from $6,000 down to $2,500. And the applicant has continued to say that they're only going to spend $1,000 and not a dime more. And we came from $6,000 down to $2,500, which I thought was a good faith effort. I'm trying to reduce our legal costs by trying to come up with concepts to be able to respond to the concerns of the planning board, and the applicant has been intransigent. And quite honestly, I'm also surprised because Cumberland Farms, in my previous community, we had the same exact issue. They wanted it front to back, our code was side to side, and I attended the meeting and asked the folks from the planning board had asked them to consider that, and they said, sure, no problem. So I'm a little bit surprised this evening that we have some of this. I just wanted to respond because I think the applicant went a little bit far afield, and I did not hear anything in, his comments about the capabilities of Howard Stein Hudson, which is a very reputable firm from my experience in the business, or what their conflict is. I think the intent of the conflict is a lot of these firms, traffic engineering firms, will do work for not only one town, but several towns, and they'll also sometimes do work for applicants that present before towns. And I think that the intent of this is when you have an applicant, you can't have you can't have a company do both sides of the peer, it's not really a peer review if they're working for, you know, Cumberland Farms in another sense, and then working for the town of Harwich. And I think the protection in this is to protect against that. So I would just ask the board if we could refine the scope and support the planning board's request to have the peer review done and allow them to actually look at this on its merits.
Okay, thank you, Chris. Ed?
Well, you know, I guess based on Mr. Vieira's presentation and our scope of areas that we are allowed to rule on, one, there's been no material presented questioning the company's qualifications or experience, nor has there been any information indicating that there's any conflict of interest. As far as I know, this firm's never worked for the town, and there's been no indication that they're a subcontractor, contractor of Cumberland Farms. So I don't know how we could have a conflict of interest. There's no financial interest in either party by the firm, and what has been presented is basically a request for the board of selectmen to weigh in on making decisions about the merits of what the planning board's to do, which is fully beyond our scope. So based on those comments, I'd move that we deny their administrative appeal.
Is there a second? Then we can continue the discussion if there's a second.
Second.
Second, okay. Linda?
Would have been nice to have had more discussion before motions.
But we can discuss before we vote. so,
I know, but
okay.
still, the only thing you can discuss is the motion, as opposed to what we're talking about, so I think that was unfair and premature. I have a question for you, Chris. You made the comment that in a prior community, the code was side to side. Is that in our code?
Certainly,
In our
I've often said
bylaws
that
and
I'm
et
not a
cetera, et
planner,
cetera,
but
and
my
zoning?
understanding of the planning in this district is to have it on the street.
But I'm
I'll
asking,
defer to
the
Dave.
question is that in our code?
Your code in this particular zoning overlay district uses the words that buildings shall face Route 28. So the proposal that has been advanced alternatively doesn't have the building face, I mean, I don't want to argue with you. It says shall face 28. There are no words side to side, and there's nothing that says it has to be on the street. It says shall face Route 28.
Mr. Spitz, would you confirm that? Not that I don't trust you, Mr. Vieira, but
I don't have the bylaw in front of me. We talk about in keeping with the historic patterns of the district, which would be Harwichport. So we require it to be in keeping with the historic patterns, which would generally mean buildings up by 28. And that is what we've suggested here.
so it is not in our, I'm going to ask my question again. So it's not in our bylaws that it be side to side?
That is correct.
Okay, just trying to get to the answer. Got it.
Thank you. Ms. Vieira, do you want to comment on that? If not, I'll ask Peter. Do you want to comment on that, or?
About the not being side to side? Or what comment would you?
No, that's okay. You were standing up again. Peter, ask your question.
Okay, could I just ask the town administrator, from what we had in our packet, the original estimate was $6,000, now you're
Correct.
saying it's $2,500.
Correct.
If I read this correctly, at the $6,000 number, the work was going to be completed within 2 weeks, and that is, it says the technical memorandum can be completed within 2 weeks of notice to proceed. Is that still the time frame? It's 2 weeks we're talking about?
Is it still
It's
2
not
weeks?
2 months, it's not 6 months, it's 2 weeks.
Correct.
Okay. The other comment I just make is, I see a lot of Cumberland Farms around, and not having gone through this design, but I think I see them in a couple different configurations, one with the pumps this way, one with the pumps that way, so, buildings in different locations, so I don't think it's anything unique. I think it has to do with what works for the site. I am concerned, if the chief has concerns about safety, I think we should all have concerns about safety.
And I would very much agree with that. That puts it in a very strong light from the chief has said. My contention is I'm still a little nervous about trying to shut off what I'm defining as peer review, which I think is still different than your definition of peer review. Maybe I can ask Jim from the planning board to comment on your definition of peer review.
Well, I mean, I think the real issue here is that the planning board, before it makes any type of decision, wants sort of an outside independent view to verify whether or not Cumberland Farms' proposal and their sort of comments that the way they have designed it is the only safe way for them to operate the store, whether or not that is indeed, a widely held thought. If peer review does show that Cumberland Farms is right in their opinion, then I think the planning board is going to have to take a look just at that, facility and may make some comments with regard to landscaping or some minor comments on the building. But basically, what I think the planning board is looking for is some verification with regard to the statements by Cumberland Farms and their representatives that their proposal is the only safe way to operate their facility. And that's what we hope that peer review will accomplish.
Linda?
Jim, has the Cumberland Farms, the people, provided the engineering external consultant review they did on this turning radius issue, et cetera, side by side? Have they provided that to the planning board?
They have provided a lot of information to the planning board, and we would turn that information over to the peer review consultant so that the peer review consultant would consider everything that was provided to the planning board by Cumberland Farms.
Okay.
Peter?
Assuming this goes to a peer review, do those folks, once you give them the data, I'll just call it that, do they operate in a vacuum, or do they, for instance, talk to the planning board? Do they talk to the fire chief? Do they talk?
Well, they're going to have to go through an information gathering process in which they would talk to not only local town officials here in Harwich, but also to representatives of Cumberland Farms.
Okay. Mr. Viera, you have other comments? Thank you, Jim.
Just one on this definition of peer review, maybe to help. I heard that the town administrator's representation, peer review of planning regulations. Now, this firm isn't being engaged to review your regulations. That's the planning board's job, to see if the applicant meets the regulations.
Right.
What we're getting here, and I think, and I agree with the chairman of the planning board, verification of safety issues. But where this starts to transcend into the conflict is when you present information that it's not safe, then it's, well, let's have town suggestions to start tinkering with it more because maybe it can be safe. That's our concern, and that's the objection. We're not talking about reconfiguring the project as proposed. We're going to spend all this time and energy about something on the side issue that a person who owns the property has no intention of doing. It just seems out of
So what would
character.
happen if the peer review came back and they were creative and they found a way of doing that was safe? Would you?
We wouldn't do it.
You wouldn't do it, even
No.
if it were considered safe?
Well, number one, they own the property, so they can control what they want to put forth as an application. Two, I'll give you one other thing, all right? To do the alternative design will cost them another $200,000 to move the gas tanks from the existing location out to the back. That's a big pill to swallow for purposes of something that they don't have to do presently because they've got about 15 to 20 years left on those gas tanks in the ground. So the short answer is, if someone could conceivably take that design, and I'm not suggesting it's even remotely possible, but if someone could conceivably do that, I have been informed, my client's position is it will not do it because it does not believe it is convenient or safe or workable for their business operation. Because at the end of the day, it's about making sure the customers get in there safely and conveniently so that they can, provide a service to them.
Okay. So then that comes back to a big fight with the planning board. But again, our discussion tonight is simply the peer review. So I would bring us back there. Jim will have a comment. And
Yeah, I'd like to expand on my comment with regard to, just to respond to something that Jamie had mentioned. I mean, the planning board has had extensive discussions on this matter, but has not as yet come to any final determination on this matter. Through those discussions, it is my sense that the planning board is concerned that the proposal is not consistent with the village overlay district that exists in Harwichport. And the the wording from that overlay district regulation that Mr. Spitz had referred to with regard to redevelopment of facilities being sort of developed in a way consistent with the historic development patterns in the village of Harwichport. Now, one of the aspects of the peer review is going to be looking at, the safety and operational characteristics. If doing it in conformance with the village overlay district is unsafe or unworkable, then I think the planning board's going to be in a situation to basically say, this may be our regulation, but the applicant has the right to proceed with their facility in a safe and a way that they can operate it. And we're going to have to take a hard look at the proposals that were made by Cumberland Farms. And again, as I mentioned before, we may make some comments about landscaping or minor points of design, but we would proceed that way. But my sense of the planning board is we don't feel comfortable proceeding that way without going through the peer review process first.
Thank you, Mr. Atkinson. Is there any other comments? Anyone, Peter?
I'll just point out, we're talking about a $2,500 study. Excuse me, and if I look at the hourly rate schedule proposed by by HSH, the rates vary from $60 to $180 an hour, quite frankly. So they're gonna, at best spend 40 hours and at worst probably spend 25 hours doing this. I guess by the time you gather all the information, whatever they're given better be wrapped up in a nice pink bow because they don't have much time to do anything in this. So you kind of wonder what it is.
Well, I think in general, the first proposal asked for comments about the building and additional information that they took all that out, knowing now look at the traffic patterns. So, but it's still not much money for us. I agree. Ms. Fury, you have some concluding comments? I think we've probably
It's really not the function of the money. Again, it's not the function of the money that is the client's concern.
Well, it is at the end when you start worrying about the gas tank. So
Well, there's a big difference
you
between.
do get, it does.
Well,
I
you
would
asked
assume
me.
that's a factor that's taken into consideration by the planning board, the overall cost.
That may not be a factor that they have to consider at all. You did ask me if it came back, it would safe, would my client still do it? And I gave you one of the
Right.
reasons why they wouldn't. I was just trying to respond to your question. I think that, again, the issue of whether it's $6,500 or $2,500, it's what's the purpose that it's being utilized for, and is the purpose proper?
Yeah.
And our position is it's not.
Right.
So,
Okay. Thank you.
you're welcome.
That's also just ask for clarification. The peer review, whatever the results are that come back in this technical memorandum, I would assume are non-binding. Is that right? Does it force anybody to do anything at that point in time?
I think it's a tool.
I think it would be like
Jim, please, if you will. Hate to cut you off, but we want your wisdom on TV.
No, the results of the peer review would not be binding on the planning board, but it's sort of like advisory to the planning board in assisting the planning board in making its decision. But the ultimate decision will rest with the planning board.
Okay. Okay. If there's no other comments out there, we have a motion and a second. Ms. Fury, you want one last comment?
Now, not every lawyer has to have the last word, so.
Okay. I think we're going to go ahead and vote then. All in favor?
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman, could you just clarify what the motion is?
The motion was to deny the appeal request.
Deny the appeal request from Cumberland Farms. And it was seconded?
It was second.
It was motion by Ed, second by Peter.
Yep.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Aye.
I'm in favor. So that leaves us a 2-2 tie then.
Where's Angelo? You need him.
So the motion failed.
Motion fails then.
So it sounds like if we make a motion to accept the appeal, more than likely we'll have the same 2-2.
Try it.
There's just no, there's no action, basically.
There's no action, yeah. Okay.
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman, we could table this until we have a full board.
We can do that. Is there a motion to table it?
Mr. Chair, I would move to table this motion and bring it back in 2 weeks when we have a complete board and
28th.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Is there any more discussion on that? I hate to postpone this, I know. Now
That'd be the
planning
28th.
board, 28th,
7 o'clock?
yeah. After, sometime after 7. I hate to bring you back, Ms. Vieira and the other people, but we'll, this is still an important project, so we probably should get everyone here then.
28th is fine.
Okay. Thank you. We'll put it on the agenda for the
Need to vote
28th.
it.
Had a motion and a second.
We'll vote on it then. All in favor?
aye.
Opposed? Okay,
Thank you.
So that was 3 to 1?
yeah. No. I didn't vote, but I'll vote if you need to, because it wasn't
Okay,
necessary.
so 2 to 1.
Who voted against it, the tabling?
Vote against it.
I didn't,
What was the vote? Let's count. Let's
all right, let's
Yeah.
try this
All,
again.
all in favor of the tabling, raise your hand.
2.
I'll vote then. So 3 to 1.
3,
Thank you.
3-0-1.
Okay, moving on then to the next is vote to approve license agreement between the town of Harwich and the Domestic Violence Hotline for use of Alborough House. And Chris, I'll
Just,
throw this back to your court, or?
Yeah, actually, I have had some assistance from Dave Spitz on this as well. One of the things that the board has tasked administration with is to try to assess the the viability of having businesses go in and use the Albro House. And it's kind of hard for us to do this in kind of a theoretical way. So we have been, Sheila has been kind of letting word out that if people are interested in utilizing the house for commercial purposes, then they should approach the town. We did have a domestic violence hotline that came in that had an interest in. Initially, we did a room use agreement. What we asked for the board this evening is to do a license agreement for use, and I think the rental amount was $250 per month.
That's correct.
And so what we're, in the nice thing about doing a license agreement is it does give us the flexibility of not necessarily doing something super long-term, but it gives us a means to assess whether this makes sense as a reuse for that building, with the idea that we will continue to explore and see what the financial viability is of renting out the building or parts of the building, as the town will continue to use some parts for counseling elements. The hope would be to then, pretty shortly, hopefully, get the building information that we have already from Sean on the expenses to update the house, have him work with us on some of the improvements that would need to be made for commercial purposes to reuse parts of it for these counseling or hotline type of activities. And then that would help us to put together a plan to present to the board with what the viability is of having that house be used in a somewhat equitable manner. I don't believe we'll come up with enough revenue to totally offset all the costs, but the idea would be to see how much can we come up with and how can we utilize that to see if we can decrease the amount of money that the town loses by just operating that as a strictly town facility. So what you're being requested this evening is to approve the license agreement with the domestic hotline folks.
I have just one question. I know, Linda, you have some, but Chris, I'm a little nervous about spending a lot of money on this while we develop it. But for this specific use, the only thing you're talking about is to upgrade the phone lines?
I think this is just a phone line, which is about $500, give or take.
Yeah, we need to put an electric outlet in, so that's going to be, I think it's actually about 700.
700.
Okay, but there's nothing, because we're still trying to look long-term what a plan would be, and I would hate to spend money
Too much
doing
money
structure
to-
changes until we have a clear understanding. This gives us maybe a little bit of information on how we can look forward, but it's not enough to spend real money.
Yeah, this isn't the be-all and end-all, the solution to Albro House,
Okay.
but this at least gives us some element of the marketability of the facility for
Right.
private use.
Okay.
is really
Linda?
what we're trying to accomplish.
Couple questions. The license agreement that was in our packet, who is the renter? Because that's blank. Or licensee, excuse me, that's blank. So it's $250 a month because the consideration was
Was
also
not in
blank.
there either.
Item number 1, occupy a portion of the property. What portion? Generally, in any kind of renting a room or something, there should be a little floor plan that says, this is their space that they're occupying and paying $250 a month for. So that's not in here, so I don't know what they're renting. So that, I think in item 12, while I recognize the, carry liability insurance and the amount satisfactory to the town, generally in any kind of agreement, you say X dollars for liability, X dollars this, workers' compensation, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So you usually, right in the agreement, have those arrangements. And I'm assuming we don't have an insurance certificate at this point, or we do?
I don't
Not,
believe.
no, we do not.
We do not.
Okay, so that needs to get done before we,
Yep.
Actually, I should check that. We may, but I'll check.
two other questions which I had asked in mid-June, and I'll ask again. Does the town need any additional insurance coverage? Because we're having a renter there, and is there any additional coverage that we're going to need in terms of liability? Because this is a non-employee now in that building on a regular basis. So do we need any additional insurance? I'd like that answered before I'm prepared to vote on this. And probably a last question was, our youth counselors, because she's a youth counselor, she sees youth in her practice. Do we have to have Cory checks on somebody who is renting there? Cory, sorry, and all that stuff? I think that's another question that I
Yeah,
have.
it's our facility, and we rent it out to kids, so, we can obviously ask for that. I don't think that's an issue.
But I think we should have all that before we vote as a board to accept this license agreement. I mean, I think there's some considerable pieces that are kind of missing here.
I think all those are reasonable, and,
Yeah.
they ask me to do a lot of different things, and Dave and I are doing our best, so we will get that additional information.
we can
and
have that.
bring it back.
And actually, and then update this license agreement. I am very interested, though, in the insurance coverage if we need anything additional, because this is a different arrangement than a casual person coming in for a session and then leaving. These are people who are going to be there, so do we need to do anything with our insurance carrier to notify them, et cetera?
Yeah.
Let me go first to David. Do you have anything you wanted to add? to
No,
what Chris said?
I was just here to support whatever Chris had to
Questions?
say.
Okay. Peter, then I'll get you, Lou.
It's going to sound nitpicky, but some of the things that should be in a license agreement are who empties the trash? Who provides the restroom supplies? It's a common restroom, isn't it? Who cleans the place? The fact that, I assume in this, it includes the heat and the electricity, I'm assuming. And I think I heard from here that there's a phone line, and I'm assuming the licensee would pay their own phone costs, whatever that is, phone and
That's
data,
the-
whatever.
That's the intent on this,
Yeah,
is
but
to
I
have
think,
them
I
pay.
think those kind of little
Yep.
details need to be in here to make sure that, and probably some more. But I think the good news is, we found somebody that thinks that facility might be useful to them, so I think that's encouraging.
Yeah, we have actually received about 3 or 4 requests already, so there is a certain level. Some of it's charities that don't want to pay much, but certainly we are getting some level of interest.
If a light bulb burns out, if it's over their area, like right there, would they replace it, or do we replace it?
But
Those
that
yeah.
gives us some encouragement to work on the license, because it'll be a better template as we go forward if we get all these details in there.
I did like that in here under section 10 was all the hold harmless and et cetera for the town. That's really good to have in here.
Lou?
Mr. Chairman, I just would like to add, is this a 24-hour operation?
That's a good question.
And if it's a 24-hour operation, will the town bear any more costs in terms of security?
This is another good question, which I
That's a
don't know
good
how that
question.
works.
Right, that's why I'm asking the question, just to ask.
And
And the other is the compatibility of the two renters, one being ourselves with youth, and the other being, is there compatibility? Could there be other issues in terms of conflicts? So I would just be cautious.
Yeah. We've had 3 inquiries that I know of. This was the first one. And what we're doing is we are checking about compatibility. In this case, the person involved is running a hotline. There are no other people other than this single employee who's coming to this facility. And he does not have to be there after hours. So for this one, I think it's very compatible. Sheila House also happens to know the person, which doesn't hurt, but that's secondary. And for the other 2, we're still going through that, those same questions.
Well, it's good that, so they're ahead of you on this one, Lou, it sounds like, and looking at it. I guess where we are at this moment, Chris, we'll bring this back and
Yeah, if we can
the
table
next,
it to,
for 2 weeks, and we'll fine tune this license agreement and then bring it back. Is that acceptable to everyone?
Sure.
Linda, Ed,
Yep, that's fine.
Dave, and Chris? Okay.
Yep.
We'll do that then. We'll put that on the agenda for 2 weeks.
Thank you for the input, too.
We'll move into new business item C, which request from Harwich Conservation Trust for a waiver of permit fees, permission to use 203 Bank Street for access to wildlife, music, and art stroll to be held on September 13th and 14th. Discussion and possible vote. Michael Locke.
I think you described the request to the letter. So just look forward to any questions you might have. This is just by way of background. This will be the 2nd year in a row. We'll be hosting the Wildlands Music and Art Stroll, which includes the Guild of Harwich artists painting plein air, the landscape at Harwich Conservation Trust's largest protected preserve, the 66-acre Bank Street Boggs Nature Preserve in Harwich Port. And at the same time, there will be live acoustic music throughout the site, and people walk the trails, enjoy watching the art unfold, listening to the music, celebrating 26 years of Harwich Conservation Trust saving special places. Now, we did organize the event for the same weekend as the town's Cranberry Harvest Festival as a way to bookend that event, more towards Harwich Center. I think that they're complementary and that they both draw people to town and the offerings that Harwich has to share. So part of this request for permit fee waiver would help us move forward with that event. You'll see number 1 is also permission to utilize the Harbor Masters Workshop lot on September 13th and 14th.
As my memory is, last year was extremely successful. Got a lot of people out there. Got, I think, good publicity for Harwich Conservation Trust and for the town of Harwich, and help bring people into the Cranberry Fest. But just add one comment. We have in the past year or so started waiving half of the fee, and not the full fee, as a recommendation of the inspectors. And we might want to do that. I'll throw it on the table is to be consistent with what we've done in the past. It's not big money. It's like $55. So
$55.
it's not going to break either of our banks to do that.
Right.
But for a consistency purpose, I'll throw that on the table. Ed?
Well, Michael's right. We last year did coordinate with the Cranberry Festival Committee on this event and have had discussions with, I forget his name,
Our new land stewardship coordinator, Matt Cannon.
Matt, about coordinating parking issues and possibly sharing shuttle buses. But and so I'm fully supportive of the activity. I also understand that it's a fundraiser, as is the Cranberry Festival. I do know, I'm not necessarily certain that in terms of waiving fees, that it's within the town Board of Selectmen's purview to waive the health department fee. That would be a Board of Health decision. Mr. Ballantyne's correct. We tend to waive half of the building permit fee for nonprofits, The entertainment license is purely a Board of Selectmen license,
Yeah.
and it's our decision on to waiving that. I'd just like to know that for the 3 events, well, 4 events, including Beach Day, that the Cranberry Festival operates during a year. We pay some $1,800 in fees for use of facilities and various permits and health permits, building permit, whatnot,
Okay.
as addition to all the expense of any public works, fire department, or police department detail costs.
Chris?
I was just going to say, some folks were saying they couldn't hear you. If you could just speak into the mic, that's all.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
Are there any other comments on, I mean, I guess where we are, the discussion basically is a motion on the fees, whether we want to waive the fees or half the fees. And the second part of that motion is permission to use the Bank Street lot, which we haven't discussed that. That doesn't seem to be an issue.
Well, Mr. Chair,
It's an easy one.
I'll move that we grant permission to use the Bank Street lot
Second.
for the event.
Okay, is there a discussion? We'll take the 2 separate votes then. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Is there a motion on the fees?
Just on the fees, Mr. Chairman, what we have from the building inspector is a $55 fee for the tent, no need for a building permit. So I think it would be half of the 55, and then it says, as of today, no determination by the applicant if an electrical permit would be required, and that fee generally is not waived. And then certainly the entertainment license would be the purview of the board. So if you wanted the half the tent fee, the electric permit, if needed, would be what it is, and then the entertainment license would be waived.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Can I have that repeated again? That was pretty long-winded. So what are we doing?
I'm sorry. According to the building
Not
inspector.
sure what Peter moved.
Half the tent fee, which
Half
is
the
half of $55, which is $27.50 if I do the math right.
Yeah.
That if an electrical permit is required, they'd have to pay the full fee for the
If it
permit.
is,
Yeah.
he's not sure if it is.
You understand that, Mike?
And-
That's because that's contracted out. That's not,
And that's the end of that motion, and we'll take up the entertainment license. I would
Yeah.
take it up separately.
Okay, so
That's
the
fine.
motion was to
Reduce
waive
27.50 cents.
50% of the tent permit.
Correct.
correct.
Because I know that Ann gets annoyed with us when we get mushy
No,
on the
not Ann.
the motions.
That's why I'm trying to get the language so I can help in the minutes.
Is there a second?
Second.
Ed, you have
Just
discussion?
a question, are you, in your musical stroll, are you doing electrified music out in the?
We don't plan to, but
Yeah.
if we do, we'll follow the proper procedures
Yeah.
and acquire that permit, but right now, we don't plan to.
But typically, you'd be using a small generator
We're just,
if you,
last year, we used unamplified acoustic
Yeah.
music, so that we plan to do the same.
so,
Okay.
probably won't.
So we'll worry, probably not, we'll worry about that when it comes up. All in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, now we have one more motion on the entertainment.
license.
Mr. Chair, and I would move that we waive the entertainment license fee associated with this event.
Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay.
Thank you very much. Be a great event. Thanks for your support.
Michael, you might want to stay there because I think you're up next. We'll move on to item, new business item D is request for approval of the Herring River Woodland Conservation Restriction. Discussion and possible vote. This issue we've talked about a couple times in the past because we're now moving to approve the restrictions so we can accept the grant money, as I understand it. And Michael, maybe you can just give us a brief update in addition to that.
Yes. Just recall that at the spring town meeting 2013, voters approved acquiring the 6.5 acre property with approximately 365 feet of frontage on the Herring River adjacent to the town's Bell's Neck Conservation lands from Mr. Verocchi in order to continue the town's eligibility for a state local acquisitions for natural diversity, acronym LAND grant, for up to 52% of the project cost. Harwich Conservation Trust coordinated pre-acquisition of the property by the Compact of Cape Cod Conservation Trust. Full disclosure, I work for both organizations, so the coordination went very smoothly. We had to do that pre-acquisition because the Verrocchi's as the seller wanted to close prior to the deadline for the state grant application. Okay, so we, under the arrangement between the Compact of Cape Cod Conservation Trust as the pre-acquisition agent for the town for the property, basically a buy and hold agent of this property, we waited till the remaining days in the state's fiscal year, which, as we know, ends June 30th, to find out if the grant monies would become available. Indeed, they did. So that was a worthwhile effort. The amount is approximately $206,700. So in order to receive those funds, the town has to place a conservation restriction over the property consistent with the state's Community Preservation Act statute. And this is an accelerated process now because the town closed on the Verrocchi property and now has to comply with the state's land grant reimbursement requirements within roughly the next 2 weeks, so by the end of July. So I've been working with Town Administrator Chris Clark and Assistant Town Administrator on fulfilling these grant compliance requirements. So before you is one of the key components of the compliance requirements, and that is approval of this conservation restriction tonight. Then it goes to the state for the state Secretary of Executive Office and Energy and Environmental Affairs signature. Is returned to the Barnstable County Registry of Deeds for recording. And then we provide evidence of that recording to the state to facilitate the grant being dispersed to the town.
Okay. Thank you, Michael. Just two other points that I'm sure you bring up in a bit anyway. One is that we need to vote on the conservation restriction, which we've discussed several times. But I understand that as part of this, we also have to provide a land management plan.
That's correct. And baseline documentation report. The Compact of Cape Cod Conservation Trust prepared the successful land grant application on behalf of the town. It's funded by Harwich Conservation Trust. Harwich Conservation Trust is also willing to fund the baseline documentation report and land management plan preparation in order to expedite this process and facilitate the disbursement of the funds to the town. This is an incredible opportunity to refill the town's Community Preservation Act open space reserves, and we don't want to miss this chance.
Okay.
There's also a requirement, believe it or not, for a sign to be placed on the property prior to disbursement of the funds. I did see that email. Thank you,
And we,
Chris Clark, for sending
you do
that
have
out.
on
Yes.
your, given to you tonight, Chris Clark provided an example of the sign, which my understanding is has to be, go through the planning,
Go through the building
the
inspector.
building inspector has to approve it, but we don't have to do anything with this because it's on town
I
property.
just wanted to make you aware of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, that's good. And just to finish that thought, Conservation Trust has agreed to go ahead and have the sign made. That's a requirement. So what we're really, I think we need two motions tonight if we all agree. One is to approve the conservation restriction. Then I think we should go ahead and vote on asking the Harwich Conservation Trust to prepare the land management plan. So that's officially done. They've agreed to do that and put it together. And it has to be done by the end of the month, so.
Yes.
It's a rush project, which we appreciate the help.
Sure.
Ed?
Well, Mr. Chair, I find it interesting that apparently they need to have gotten publicity before they actually put up the money. But anyway, that's fine.
They do good work.
But with that, I'd move that we approve the conservation restriction as proposed by the Harwich Conservation Trust.
Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any more discussion? Peter?
Can I just ask for clarification, and for everybody else that's sitting out there, the conservation restriction, I'm assuming, is pretty much a boilerplate that you filled in specific details, like when we had a town meeting, and when we voted this, and the
Yes.
description of the property.
Yes.
But the elements that are in here, things like mining and that type of thing, are all the standard boilerplate that the state requires us to put in this.
Standard prohibitions, yes.
Thank you.
Yes.
Any other questions, comments? Comments from the audience? If not, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? And as I said, I'd entertain a motion to accept Harvest Conservation's offer to develop the management plan and submit it by
And-
the end of the month.
And baseline documentation.
And baseline documentation to
So
meet the
moved.
guideline.
Move seconded.
Second, is there any more discussion? Any comments, questions from the audience? If not, all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, Mike.
Thank you, and congratulations on a significant grant. Congratulations.
We'll move next to new business, which is D, is the wastewater committee charge. This is our first reading. Very briefly reiterate this, we've been working on wastewater in Harwich, actually 14 years with Who's Counting. We started water sampling, I think, in the year 2000, and have now, through Water Quality Task Group initially, and then we added to that a Citizens Advisory Committee, and then we added to that a Wastewater Implementation Committee. The Wastewater Implementation Committee was dissolved by the way it was charged at the beginning. The other two committees we dissolved tonight. We have, with all their good work, and that'll be part of the reason for dissolving those, is that we can, Chris, we can put together a letter of thanks for the people on those committees. Is that we've developed a draft comprehensive wastewater management plan, which is now before the county commissioners and the state. It's a bit in limbo right now while we're waiting for the section 208 process to continue, but we've gone a long way. Reason for putting this charge in front of you is that now's the time for to gear up, re-energize, refocus our committee somewhat. The draft CWMP is almost more conceptual than it is fact. As it moves forward, we'll be moving more into implementation phase. That's why the way I've drafted this, and I've had input from the water quality and our consultants on this as well as others, is to shift some of the focus from a volunteer selectmen's committee to a committee reporting to the town administrator, who of course reports to us, and so we still are in charge, maybe not as directly. But also, I wanted to place some more pressure on the town administrator, if you will, because as we move into implementation, this requires more technical support from town engineers, from town planners, from the departments you can think of, linked, so when we dig a hole for water to build a road, we're sure we look at sewering at the same time, but don't dig it up a few years later. This follows somewhat the template that we did for the safety committee that we worked on. Linda, I know you got some legal opinion on that we could mix and match town employees with volunteers. So we had both the technical expertise, plus this is so important, we want volunteer input as well. So I'll take your comments tonight. This is the first reading, so you can read it and then email comments to, it's however you want to do it, and we can discuss it in more detail. I guess I'd like to get your general thoughts tonight, and then if you can email specific comments to Chris, or I guess you, Chris, or Ann, or however you want.
Yeah, you can send to me, and then I'll make
Send-
sure I
and-
coordinate with staff.
And then we can bring that back next meeting to start this. We do need to get this going It's been delayed longer than I would like, but we had other activities going on. I wanted to be sure I had the town administrator's input into this with town meeting budgets and things you know about. But we're at a stage where we need to, as I've commented before, we've been working with the Cape Cod Commission on outreach efforts. They have some things in mind that this committee should be involved in. It's also been postponed a little bit as we move forward. So with that, I'll like any of your comments, and then we'll move ahead. Linda?
I think just my only comment would be, can we expand the reporting that we would be looking for out of this group? It just says we'll update by semi-annual reports. And can we somehow put some more meat to that in terms of what we would be looking for? Would it include timelines? Would it include tasks? Because a report that would stay, we're monitoring isn't going to be enough beef to it, and I don't know how to phrase this, Larry.
I'll work on some language. I'll do that and
I think,
bring
Larry,
that back.
there should be an ongoing and continuously updated 5-year financial forecast or a plan or something that at least looks short-term, and I'd call 5 years short-term, as to what we're facing. Recognizing that when you look at the whole 40 years, it's hard to figure out what's going to happen in year 22, for instance, but, for the next foreseeable future, which I would say is 5 to 7 years, maybe consistent with our capital.
I would go
plan.
7 years consistent with the capital
Capital plan.
Yeah, the
That
capital
should
plan.
be, every year, that should be a forecast
That should be part
we
of this.
see.
That's
What's
a good
the plan,
idea. That's a good point.
I'll add I'll add a statement on
I do
that,
think it's
too.
time to make this transition. I mean, I think,
Absolutely.
we're headed in this direction.
Okay. Anything else? Of course, we have, you can you can email, these two comments I'll work on. Any other comments that you didn't comment, but as you think of in the
Yeah,
next couple of days?
There are a couple of areas that I need to think about and review charter provisions
Okay.
to make sure we're in conformance.
Okay, good. We'll do that, and we'll bring it up again then. If we can get these comments within the, well, we're not meeting give a week. That way we'll have time to get them in by our next agenda meeting is a week from Wednesday, so this isn't our normal rush, but you have some time. Yes, Linda?
And I would also say that as we go through the readings on this and finalize this committee, that doesn't mean that people have to wait to put in an application to be on this committee, because the interview subcommittee will have to interview people, make proposals. So if people can start thinking about that, get applications in, that would just expedite it as well.
That's your marketing hat?
That's my marketing hat.
I appreciate that. I like that comment. Okay, thank you. We'll move ahead then to the, we've lost Leo. I was going to give him a chance to say his 2 cents, but,
I think Mike asked him to,
well, we'll bring him back at the end then.
yeah, I mean, we can come in.
Chris,
during the
we'll go to
portion
town
of mine.
administrator's report,
Under the
the
town
dead pine
administrator's
trees update. Maybe, Chris will just give,
Most important
Leo,
aspect we have.
we'll give you
Yeah.
I assume you wanted to follow Mr. Howell's comments and.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Not really. I just said I would show up, and I appreciate that he came for me. I had a previous commitment in Barnstable, and I couldn't make
Okay.
it here. If there's any questions.
We have some follow-up action, so we'll be in touch with you when
Excellent,
when it
thank you.
comes back.
I appreciate it.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Clark.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a couple things, well, actually, I guess quite a few. First, we have arranged for a meeting with the trustee representatives for next Monday, I think it is. Hopefully you got your invite. I know Linda had volunteered to attend that,
I was volunteered.
So we have that,
Yeah, the 21st at
I
noon.
read that
21st
as
at
the,
noon,
I read
high
that as the
noon.
same, Linda.
Huh?
I make no distinction on that comment.
So on that, just to follow up, also, we did have Amy, the conservation agent, and Julie went out with the water department folks to look at the pine trees with the, so we are in the process of monitoring that, and they're gonna put together some kind of plan for how they want to try to address that. Obviously, a large amount of area with the dead trees. Also, just an update, I'll try to do this monthly, hopefully I'll be able to remember, but on the home rule charter amendment, this is, I guess, your July update, that it has been submitted to committee and they're in discussions. And I guess they were saying that they're going to have a discussion about doing a favorable release of the bill. So it is.
Remind me for us all what the home rule.
This was you can't serve 2 elected boards at the same time.
Okay.
Again, that's a real simplification, but. Also, we did receive on Copeland and Page, we had I think at our last meeting, there was a discussion with the hot dog vendor over here on Old Colony. And what we did, actually, there was something filed at Superior Court. It did come to the town. We have provided that to Copeland and Page. In my understanding, Copeland and Page, where this is really a benefit to the vendor and to the person on the corner, whose name escapes me at the moment, that.
Oh, Anastasio.
Yes, that we would kind of just monitor it, but really the defense work would be done by the property owner. So I asked Copeland to do that. So they have filed a notice of appearance, and they did send a letter to the property owner to make sure that they're aware of their obligations, as well as the vendor lady.
Is it the
herself.
property owner or the applicant?
Actually, we sent it to both.
Okay.
Because officially, it's both. The applicant can't do it if they don't have the authority of the property owner to do that work.
From a practical stand, what's that mean? Can the vendor start business until this is done, or?
Mm-hmm.
Yes,
So he won't lose the summer while this is,
yes.
Okay.
And then, I know one of the things I think Angelo had brought up at one of the meetings about trying to reach out and be a little bit more friendly in terms of economic development. I did actually meet with some commercial realtor advisors on that property across from Saquatucket Harbor, just to kind of see, and I do have some of the information from them. I will provide that to the board. A big facility, I don't know if there's any potential town use, but at least I met with them and told them that as we're looking for potential vendors for the middle school, if anything comes up, this is 32,000 square feet, the middle school is 70,000 square feet, that, certainly I don't see why we can't collaborate to see if there's additional uses. So just to let you know that I had done that. Also, we send town staff to different meetings. I think actually I went to a meeting on violence in the workplace and how to respond to violence in the workplace and through our insurance company. And I appreciate several town staff go to these. We actually receive what's called reward credits, which is really cash off of our general liability policy, and we have received in that cash or credits almost $16,000. So, staff is making an effort to try to go out and do that. And I don't have any good news, but I have been working on that solar to try to stay up with that. So I have identified the person at NSTAR that is responsible for doing the interconnect, and I put in a call to him today to try to get, and I haven't heard back, but if I do get something sooner, I'll forward that to the board. But last meeting, I had followed up with the building inspector, and we had basically had quite a bit done, but officially the permits weren't actually issued. So I sent something originally to CVAC to make sure that they were aware that they need to make sure the vendor gets all the town approvals before we go. I thought that was a very good observation, Selectmen use. And then I also put in a call here to try to double barrel it. So we'll stay on top of it and try to get a date out of them.
That's probably vacationing in Harwich.
And that concludes my comments this evening, Mr. Chairman.
okay, thank you. Leo?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Can I just have a clarification on the charter amendment? My understanding is that we only have, 2 more weeks left for bills to actually be passed, and if they're not passed by then, they'll have to wait till the next session, which starts in January. Was there indication given to you, through you, Chair, if I could ask the town administrator, if this is something that may be voted on prior to the end of the month, or it's going to die in committee?
Yeah, I don't know, Leo, is the honest answer to it.
Okay.
We could look at it to see if they have to resubmit it for, I know they have a cycle, and if it dies, then we can obviously ask for it to be resubmitted in the new session.
That's why I know that I made the request that we could follow this up so that it doesn't get lost in the shuffle.
Ed, then Leo.
The current session doesn't actually end until the newly elected representatives get sworn in January. And if it can happen before then, at a certain point in the fall, they basically go on holiday break for the Thanksgiving and Christmas holidays, but they still move legislation that is either non-controversial or has no objection, even during that time up until the end of the year.
The only reason why I happen to mention is because the meeting that I was at previous to coming here, and the reason why I was late is that there was some other legislation that those particular people were interested in, and they made the point quite strongly that if it did not pass by the end of this month, and again, I don't know for sure, I'll take Mr. McManus's opinion on it, but that they are in fact going on hiatus after the 30th of January, and usually do not vote on bills between then and January 1st, or July, I mean, until January 1st. So I think if it's really important to you guys, you may want to call our representative and see where it stands.
Would you do that, Mr. Clark?
Yep, we'll check.
Okay. Thank you. Ed, Selectmen, there
Well, just some updates
on the school.
on the school. The move out of the high school has been completed. The surplus sale of the remaining things in the middle school was done on Saturday. I think they raised sold $8,000 of old file cabinets and desks and what have you.
I wanted to go over, but didn't need anything.
Yeah, I know. Can only use so many rusty old file cabinets, but they are now down to clearing out the remainder of the things at the middle school in preparation for turning the facility over to the town. The asbestos abatement for the high school began today, and they will be going through that, and then start demolition. They are starting at the end of the building on the south end by the library to get that cleared out first, in as much as it's the area that will impact doing some of the remaining landscape and site improvements in the front of the building. But they anticipate the entire demolition process will not be complete until sometime the beginning of October. And with continuing site work on grading and getting the fields ready for planting going on into Thanksgiving. And then they'll sort of shut down site work until the spring.
Were you able to coordinate the demolition with the reef, that project?
Yes, we met Dan Tavares, the project manager, and I met with Amy and Julie today. Link and the highway director has designated an area out at the landfill to receive materials. There's more capacity on the reef than there's materials available, so we'll try and get as much out as we can. It's going to depend on what the condition of the materials are once we get the excavation. Probably not going to want to use the concrete from the slab on top because of the various coatings for the floor adhesives that we're on. But once that's cleared away, the bigger footing pieces and foundation wall pieces seem to be of the size and type
and ability to come out of the ground in shapes that will be beneficial for building the reef. And it's hoped that in the process of working this out, because we believe that the demolition contractor was going to transfer the material to off Cape for processing down into road-based material, having the much shorter transportation time, that there may be a slight credit to the building project by being able to take it and deliver it to the transfer station in stockpiling for the reef project. The date for the ribbon cutting has been set for August 21st at 11 o'clock, and invitations will be going out in the next couple of days. Planning and attempts at coordination on saving the mural are still continuing. It's becoming.
That's what I read in the papers.
It's coming down to trying to work out the details of how to schedule the ballet of the demolition with swinging the mural out of the way. And if that all can work, we'll be happy, and if it can't, we'll be very sad. But we will make every attempt we possibly can to do that.
Thank you, Ed. Peter?
Can I just ask, since Carolyn's here, the damage that was done on the back of the community center, do we have an update as to where we are in fixing that, or has it been fixed, or, you know what I mean, right? The siding and stuff like that, just. I don't want to put you on the spot, but it's just a question that comes up, people ask.
Nope, I'm not on the spot. Sean has been coordinating that through the insurance, and I know he has had contractors out there, and they had finished the very back of the building, had moved to over by the gym, and I believe, I did not ride out that way tonight, but I believe that they were finished, but I can ride that way and check. But I know that Sean has had contractors out there.
Okay, so pretty close to being done then,
Yes,
if not done.
correct.
Okay, thank you.
And I know that if it isn't done, Sean is constantly on the contractors who are working out there.
Thank you.
Good. Thank you. Linda?
I think just another plug for people who are interested in being on committees. We're starting to interview for the Middle School Repurpose Committee, Take Two, and hopefully that people, if there are other people who are interested, we'd like to hear from them so we can set up interviews and talk to them and get that moving, as well as our new Traffic Safety Committee.
Thank you. I have nothing, so motion to, I'll
So
entertain a
moved.
motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
I'm not in favor of that. Who's going to vote in favor of that? It's only 8:47, it's like.